Mitigating brute force attacks via login page. Brute force attacks are attempts to break into secure areas of web application by trying exhaustive systematic permutations of code or username password combinations to discover legitimate authentication credentials. So generally brute force attacks are performed by using certain like tools or softwares like Burp Suite, a lot of other tools built in Kali Linux, right? And a whole bunch of like username and password combinations are tried to get into the system to discover a legitimate authentication credential, right? So in this section we are going to see how we can prevent brute force attacks, right, using F5 ASM policy or WAF policy, right? Because in F5 WAF what we can do, first we can create a login page, right? And once like login page is created, then on the same login page we can enable brute force prevention, right? And hang in there, I'm going to show you practically how we can create login page from where we can enable brute force prevention in F5 PIP ASM. So ASM will monitor traffic to detect excessive failures to authenticate, monitor suspicious IP addresses, and detect other anomalies in a typical traffic pattern for the login URL, right? So first login URL has to be created. And when ASM detects a brute force attack, it triggers brute force maximum login attempts are like exceeded violation and applies the blocking setting in the security policy. So if security policy enforcement mode is blocking, right, then request will be blocked. Even we can enforce or force captcha, right, to avoid brute force attack. So there are different ways. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to first like create ASM policy. So here like there is F5 PIP ASM and the web application, vulnerable web application, right? Like there is whole bunch of like vulnerabilities in web application, and attacker sitting here to the external network side. So attacker is launching attacker PC, launching in fact brute force attack, right, on a particular page. So first thing first, so let me first show you from where we can create ASM policy. So it's F5 PIP ASM dashboard and 17.0 version. So I think 17.1. So current version is 17.1. So in 17.1, in fact the way how we create login page is a bit different than earlier versions like 13.x or 14.x, but most of the options are still same. In fact, not like major change, no substantial change, right? The only way like how we configure like settings or options is a bit different, of course, in this latest version. So just create security policy. I'm going to create a new policy here, right? This is my ASM policy. You can give any name, and this is to brute force prevention. Okay, and policy type security, policy template. Yes, I'm okay with it. I want to go with rapid deployment. There is no parent policy. Virtual server, there is one virtual server already created. Logging profile, log all requests, application language, default selected Unicode, UTF-8, I'm good with it. Enforcement mode, so if we want to put the policy straight away in blocking mode, then we can do that, but in production network you should always start with transparent mode, right? From day one your policy should never be in transparent mode, right? So at least 7 days is the best practice, strongly recommended even. So your policy enforcement mode should be transparent. Signatures, RAG signatures should be in staging mode, not enforced from day one. Policy building learning mode is manual, no problem. Signature staging by default enabled, yes, and that's the best practice. Server technologies, so if you have information about your backend server, application server, so better to specify here so that only relevant attack signatures will be enabled. In fact, otherwise what will happen, by default generic attack signatures will only be used, right? So MySQL, PHP, Unix, and what else? Tomcat, Apache. Okay, so all good. Click here, create new policy. So new policy is being created. So once policy is created, applied, then what we will do first, we will create a login page, right? From where like username and password both are required. And so from where we can do that, so select your policy. We have just created ASM policy, brute force protection, and here we have login session and login options, right? In this version, you don't have to go to application security again. So session and login, brute force protection, all can be configured from here only, right? So click here, session and logins, and here we have the option to define login pages. So click here, add page, and what is the page of login? So if I click here, is the virtual IP. So I have access backend application server, this one, backend application server with the virtual IP. So already virtual IP is created here, because you understand, like in NTM also what we do, we create virtual server with virtual IP address, and external users, internet users, they always connect to virtual IP address, right? Because F5 big IP means reverse proxy architecture, full proxy architecture, two independent and separate layer 4 connections are created. So internet outside world means they would like hit the request to virtual IP, right? So virtual IP and virtual server object is created already, associated with a default pool. Okay, so and from here, like backend application server can be accessed with the virtual IP address, and that's what I have like done here, right? And here is the page, like user underscore login.php is the login page, and here like username and password both would be required here. Alright, so copy URL from here, login.php, and add page, specify login.php, and authentication type HTML form, username is like username, and password means password, right? All good. And even you can set here successful login conditions, redirect are okay. So expected response status code 302. So I'm ready with the login page. In fact, say login page is successfully created now, right? Even if we want to configure login enforcement, I mean like if we want to restrict certain URLs, like that without successful authentication certain URLs should not be accessible, like which is known as authenticated URL. So yes, that can also be done, right? Here like we can specify logout page and also login enforcement, but in this section we are not going to see like login enforcement, but it's another setting, login enforcement. So straight away let me jump to this advanced protection and brute force prevention. So here like by default there is one login page created with the name default. So I want to create a new. So on the right corner we should find the option to create a new policy. So it's not showing up, so let me set this, create, and let me again increase the font size. So I'm going to create a brute force protection configuration. So select the login page, detection, leak credential detection if required, then even you can enable that. Source based brute force protection, maybe 1 minute, maximum prevention duration is 60 minutes. You can set it to maybe 5 minutes in testing purpose. Username, so trigger after 3 failed attempts, and mitigation action is alarm and captcha, right? So let's see this. Captcha in fact means 3 failed login attempts, then automatically a page with captcha will be displayed, right? So if there is any automated tool or software, so you understand, like captcha means after 3 failed attempts, no further attempt can be performed. And if it's human behavior, then yes, human means like easily will see the captcha code and put in there. Device ID, IP address even, yes, trigger after 20 failed login attempt. Again, I want to put it 3. Mitigation action, alarm and captcha. There are some other options also here. We will discuss in maybe the next section. So I want to go with this alarm and captcha. Client side integrity bypass mitigation, trigger after 3 successful challenges. Captcha bypass mitigation, trigger after 5 successful challenges, or maybe 3, right? Distributed brute force protection, again I want to go with 1, maybe 5. Detect distributed attack, maybe 100 or 50 or 200 failed login attempts. Detect credential stuffing. So whole bunch of options available here on this page. You can configure, right? Alright, so almost is all done. So we have our changes detail not applied yet, so we will do that. Let me see. Okay, so apply from here. Next option is just going to policy building, learning and blocking settings. That's also very important setting. And on this page, if we look at session and logins, so here like you can see by default brute force maximum login attempts are exceeded and action is set to block. If policy is in blocking mode, of course alarm is also enabled. So make sure like this option is enabled from here, right? Same like if in case if we want to configure login enforcement, then login URL bypass option should be enabled, of course, right? All good. So we don't have to do anything here. And next, let me delete logs from here. So select, delete. Okay, so I'm not going to use any software here because configuration is just 3 failed login attempts, so I can even try manually. So see here like captcha option. So this question is for testing whether you are a human investor and to prevent automated spam submission, right? So what code is in the image, and here you can see here. So this is the best way to protect brute force attack. And let me show you log also. So if you look at the log message, then you can see here brute force maximum login attempts are exceeded, right? So trigger violation, policy, alarm and captcha, yes, enforcement action. You can also see client IP address 3/3 at the time of attack detection, detection period 1 minute, maximum prevention duration 5 minutes, right? And captcha is the enforcement action. So this way we can prevent brute force attack on a specific page, right? So I hope you understand like how we can create ASM policy to mitigate brute force attack.